day one of our lecture series by Dr. Anamika Chakraborty. And that gave us very much information and also many insights. That was a very interactive session. So today we are moving on with day two lecture series by Dr. Anamika Chakraborty. So without much formalities, let's move on to the session. Ma'am, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are doing fine. You're supposed to go on the Sublime today directly by Longinus, uh, which is a literary work of literary criticism by this Roman man of letters, which we now take to be from the first century, as against, like, there was a confusion like whether it belonged to the first or the third, as you know. And now we know that we take it to be of some Pseudo Longinus belonging to the first century. And this work, which is in an epistolary form, in the form of letters to his some Roman whose name is Terentianus. Uh, this work is basically in response to another work by another Roman, Caecilius, where this Caecilius had tried to define, tried to interpret, or tried to express what sublime was, the meaning of sublime. And Longinus differs in his opinion of the sublime, and this work of Longinus comes to the creation, whereas we just touched upon it, like, according to Longinus, sublime is not what actually Caecilius meant. It is something more, which is something which inspires, which is something which lifts the soul, which is something that sublime is something that um, survives the test of time, and which, in spite of repeated examinations, repeated readings, repeated literary, repeated criticisms, repeated reading across ages, across spaces, the it remains the value or its efficacy, it remains the same. That is what makes a thing sublime, and it should be devoid of things like sentimentality. It should be devoid of things like affectation, ornamentation, and what it should have is the proper balance. Like and he gives examples of numerous, at least 50 pieces, like different poem pieces. He gives extracts from different poets in history, starting from Homer and everyone, to prove or to differentiate the sublime from the not sublime, or to explain what actually sublime actually should mean, or it means. And whenever whenever something whenever an author wants to produce something which is sublime, but then fails to do so, it produces a kind of foolish. He has this word has been used. It produces a kind of foolish bombast. Like, it makes very affected speeches, paragraphs. It makes too much of ornamental paragraphs, but it takes away the that that fine emotion that is required to make a work sublime. And that is why it fails to uplift the soul. Because like, as we were saying last day, that it's actually what Longinus tells us is about the literature of power and not of knowledge. And that is why the critical function of literature is something sacramental. The critical function of literature has a sacred effect. It is a truly sublime piece has an uplifting effect, and we are lifted from ourselves into a realm of into a new realm of a new experience, something like probably Keats was talking of having when he was talking in the Nightingale, when he was thought of different methods to identify with the Nightingale. Like he was probably he was talking of that sublime experience that he wanted to have. Like we are filled with a kind of ecstasy when we read uh, that kind of a sublime piece of literature. We feel that kind of ecstasy, we feel that kind of relatedness, as if we ourselves are the creator of those lines. When we read those lines, it not only we not only think that it is the creation of someone else, but we can relate it in such an extent, or it we internalize it in such an extent that it probably we think that we ourselves have created these lines. So it creates a spell which is permanent, it creates a spell which is permanent, which remains inside us. And uh, this gives us the power to inspire, it gives us the power to uplift ourselves into the vertical space of knowledge, the not the only the horizontal accumulation of knowledge, not that. uh, because you are basically you're this to on the sublime, you have this three chapters, right? As I have gathered, the most important ones in the whole text is this 7, 8, and 9. So in chapter 7, what he says is that what makes a work, whatever I have said now, if these are satisfied, then only it makes a work truly sublime. Especially the appeal, its appeal to the readers, where a reader cannot resist his use these words, where a reader cannot resist its appeal, and it remains even after long after you have, like like the song of the Nightingale, even long after you have heard it, even long after you have read it, it remains inside our soul and mind and body. And to so there should be, naturally, all works would not be, any work of literature would not be a sublime work. So in order for a work to be sublime, in the next chapter, what he this Longinus has given five features which make a work sublime. Out of that, the first two is inherent. It's not that everybody, whoever is whoever is maybe has learned, a learned person has learned a lot of language, a lot of grammar, a lot of literature, studied a lot of literature, or wanted to be write poems. It doesn't mean that that person can make or write a paragraph, or a prose, or a stanza which will attain this kind of sublimity. No, because uh, much of an author's art. Maybe it is polished and refined by studies and by language practice and by literature, but then there has to be an innate quality if it is to be distinguished from a good piece, from a sublime piece. There are two things which is actually which has to be actually inside. That one is this concept. The first one that he says is concept. If you find it in chapter 8, that the most important one is actually the a grasp on thought and concept. And this thought and concept, it comes from the nobility of soul. According to him, it comes from the nobility of soul, the noble mind. And a noble mind and a noble soul, can create a noble concept. Anyone who is less noble, it is very rare or maybe impossible, a less noble man to create a noble work of art. That is what it is, he says. And uh, but the common thing out in all the features, the common thing is a use of a good language, is command over a very good language. When whatever language he's writing, the command over the language or the foundation over the language is very important. That is common for all the features. That is a common criteria for all the features. But other than that, the most important is the capacity of the writer or the poet to for great thought and a firm grasp of ideas, which is a part of which comes, or if which fountains from the nobility of the soul. And the second one that he tells is also innate, which also is inside a character or inside, it has to be inside. That is the emotion, the inspiration, the inspired emotion, and a strong passion. And this was one of the important things which Longinus was in had refuted of Caecilius. That is the emotion and the passion, where Longinus thinks that Caecilius has somewhere made a confusion or confused between passion and emotion. There is a very fine line of difference between the two, fine line of this thing, uh, mm, a very fine differentiation between the two, that emotion and passion. Emotion is, of course, very, very important in making a work sublime. Now see, if you go to this paragraph, I'll go to the chapter 8. If you see this, preliminary reminder that Caecilius has left out of account some of the five divisions, one of them obviously being that which relates to emotion. This place he emphasizes because he thinks that Caecilius has left this place and he has not explained this place very properly. Like emotions are, all emotions are not sublime. Like there are some emotions, like everything is an emotion. Like love is an emotion, hatred is an emotion, fear, grief, everything is an emotion. So but what he says, see, the least sublime, all emotions are not sublime, like pity, like grief, like fear. So to make a particular piece attain sublimity, emotion should be very balanced. It should not border on sentimentality. It should not border on any emotion that is available, and it should not like there are many sublime pieces which are not overtly emotional, which doesn't exude that sentimentality, but it all the same, it is a very, very sublime piece. And for example, he has given so many examples, like mostly he's used Homer, where he says that emotion is where he has said that how emotion works very in a very balanced way in order to make something very sublime. And then the third thing that he says is the figures of speech and proper construction of figures. Now, the later three features that he says, these can be acquired. These can be acquired through study, through knowledge, through practice. Okay, so these are something which a man of letters can acquire. It's not necessarily that it always has to be innate. Of that, you have the figures of speech and the proper construction of those, the language part. Then the noble diction, again, the language part, the noble diction, and the effect of dignity and elevation. So these are the five things that uh, that he has expressed, which, if used properly, can make a work a sublime piece of art. And you have to integrate all these. Now the integration, like the power, also the author, the poet also needs to have the power to integrate all these five elements in order to give that tone of sublimity, in order to so that the reader, when he reads it, he has that he has that effect inside him, so that he feels of the upliftment of his soul, or he feels that chord, that power to inspire, or he feels that he has been transcendent, he has been transcended to a different realm. So that is why all these things which Longinus says is required has to be integrated and fused in a very proper way in order to attain that tone of sublimity. And in the same breath, what he says is that these five prominent features, which arouse that sense of creativity, or this intensity. uh, we should all should the poet should always keep in mind that, on the one hand, while these five things should be there in order to make it a piece sublime, the poet should always keep in mind the impediments. It is your impediments are actually from chapter 10, but I'll just tell you the impediments that he has noted is the three. Just like sublimity needs these five features, impediments to sublimity, the three main features of impediments to sublimity: first is affectation, too much of ornamental language which doesn't have the feeling, only the ornamental language. Because if you take away the ornamentation from the language, if something does not have that inner spirit but only the ornamented language, then if you take away that ornamentation from the language, there is nothing of merit anymore. So that is one thing which is an impediment to sublimity. That is, one is affectation, then pedantry, cold pedantry, and the third is sentimentality. These three things are the ones which which are a hindrance to in making a work of art. While because sublimity, as you know, that sublimity is, he has told it time and again, from starting from chapter 4, he has said it, and many times throughout the end also, that sublimity is the echo of the what sublimity is the echo of the noble mind. Yeah, sublimity is the echo of the noble mind. So the basic foundation is the nobility of the soul. That is the basic foundation of work to be sublime, the nobility of the soul. And he goes on to give so many more examples of excerpts of poems, the epics, from the Greek classical literature, where uh, more for Homer, but Homer's Iliad, because he thinks that in Iliad he attains his sublime, his examples, or his way of writing is more sublime than in Odyssey, as he thinks that in Odyssey Homer had become aged and old, and he had lost that edge. But still he says that, because who is old? A Homer only. If a Homer becomes old, that also he doesn't become just like any other poet. Even Odyssey, even when it is far lesser in quality than than Iliad, even then it is much much better, or much in a higher realm or higher plane than any other poem. And the mostly, if you talk of the relevance, then mostly the poets of the post Renaissance period, they were uh, they were influenced so much by Longinus, even by Horace, because but uh, as we shift on towards this towards romantic theory and then modern, then Longinus gains importance or influence gradually. And Longinus is more or less they are complementary. You can say they're complementary to each other, Horace and Longinus, because Horace, on the one hand, is for the decorum of the and the mind, and Longinus is for
Hello, Dr. Anamika, are you here? We can't hear you.
this notion of sublimity. Philip Sidney, if you say or talk about Sidney, or Wordsworth later on, or this thing, Shelley, all of them, in some way or the other, when they have written about literary theories, or what or the function of the poet or the function of poetry in society, they have all touched in the line of the Longinian theory of sublimity. Like I'll tell you, because that is why Longinus is also considered to be the first romantic critic also, and he is the like he starts the way to modern criticism too. The romantic conception of the inspiration, like the artist is an inspired soul, like artist is creating in an inspiration of frenzy. Now this conception, this romantic conception of inspiration of the artist, is actually an echo of this, of the Longinian sublimity, because he's the first one to uh, to say about the nobility of the soul, and that literature is literature about the revelating nature of literature, about poetry having the character of an oracle. Like poetry is that it comes out from the divine creator, and so it has the quality of the oracle. And because it has the quality of the oracle, that is why it can also inspire. And everybody cannot do that. uh, if it is sublime, if it is sublime, then it is inspired. If it is the oracle, it is inspired, and it tells truths that any knowledge does not give us in society. That is why this importance, so much of importance, has been given to poets and the literary figures. Now, Sidney also, Sidney, then Wordsworth, when he says that poetry is the breath and the finer spirit of all knowledge. And when this thing, Shelley proclaims that the poet is like a nightingale. The poet is like a nightingale who sits in the darkness, and he gives clarity to a human society. He's a nightingale, and he gives clarity to the society. And then you know the relevance, and then you understand how important through ages people have thought about literary theories, and which literary theories means it has come from literature. If there is no literature, then there is no literary theory also. So he is like the man, the a poet is like the nightingale that sits and that gives clarity, and with its solitude, with its sublimity, and with its sweet sounds. That was Shelley's thing. And when people, when they get tranced by this melody of this unseen musician, they are moved, they are softened, and That is, and they understand, but they really don't know that poetry is the for the for the commons. They are not always aware that how or what is being happening, but they know, they are aware of the effect. So it kind of the poets are a kind of unseen musicians. uh, the poets are the divine beings or unseen musicians who, with their music, with their light, with their divinity, is enlightening the world. That is the function of the poets, which the romantics actually thought. More than that, why we should, even in this time of modern and postmodern time, and in this time of death and disease and everything, why should we think that even now these are relevant? Even the modern critics, even contemporary literary criticism is also influenced to a large extent by his theory of sublimity. Have you heard of this touchstone theory of Matthew Arnold? Matthew Arnold's touchstone theory, where he says that in order to judge a work of art, if it uh, of what quality it is, you need to we should place it, we should compare it, we should place it side by side to some classic poem or a work of great art in antiquity. And then we need to only then, if it suffices, or if it stands all the features that have or the characteristics that have been there in the great classical works of art, then we can say that this particular work which is being judged is of, we can value it, or we can understand of what value it is. This touchstone theory of Arnold also is in the line of the Longinian sublimity. That is one. The other is this thing, Northrop Frye. Northrop Frye's these are all they are all the modern literary critics, no? So Northrop Frye in his Anatomy of Criticism, Alan Tate in his New Criticism, all of them have written on particularly on Longinus's On the Sublime. Frye has written, Alan Tate has written, all of them, and all of them have been so very much so supremely influenced by this by his thought of sublimity, that that is why we say that Longinus is actually the forefather of modern literary criticism. Because Aristotelian approach, Aristotle, of course, had we all know that Aristotle has a very great influence, all of like throughout he has had a very great influence. But Aristotle's main experimentations or main area was the drama. Longinus's was poetry. So these two kind of complete the entire literary critical circle, actually. So that is, and when this with new criticism, with I.A. Richards, with Tate, with all of them who have basically based their criticism on poetry, that is why Longinus has such a big influence on them, because it is more on poetry. His works, or his conceptions, his central conceptions are more on poetry rather than Aristotle's, whose is on drama. And this looking inside and inspiring, before inspiring the society or the others, this transcending oneself inward, which has been the foundation of catharsis, which has been the foundation of basically the all classical literary criticism, this inward transcendence, this looking inside and trying to uplift oneself, everybody if everybody, no, not only the critic, but you see, if everybody is going or experiencing this process, every individual is experiencing this process internally, then very naturally it gets reflected in the society, because we ourselves, we men, society is not created by somebody from outside. It is created by ourselves. Like we are the society, society is us. So when we talk of society or social relevance, it is us we are talking of. We are talking about us, or whether it is relevant to individuals, us, because we as a whole, we individuals as a whole, we are the ones who are society. So the criticism of Longinus is, it is actually viewed as a continuation or as a part of the critical tradition initiated by Aristotle. And sublimity, because Longinus comes much later than Aristotle, a few centuries later, and sublimity is a natural endowment. It is a natural endowment, and it is a spontaneous creation. That is why the nobility of soul is so important. That is why the first two characters, the first two features that he says is something which is innate. That is why sublimity is not something that everyone can achieve in their creation, because it's a spontaneous creation. And it because and what he says is that because it is a spontaneous creation, it will become chaotic if too much of regulation and too much of rules is attached to it. It becomes chaotic. And that is why analysis of Longinus is different from analysis of Plato or analysis of Horace. How they analyze and how he analyzed is somewhere has this difference, because he says that there's a delicate balance between freedom and between restraint. In him, you can find like he's a happy, like you can say that he's a happy compromise between the classical order of restraint and the romantic order of freedom. Longinus treads somewhere in between. So he's relevant here also. He's relevant here also. And divine frenzy, which is such a romantic concept. This divine frenzy in him is tempered with regulative principles of art. Like I told you, those five characteristics where he has said about the diction, about the figures of speech, and about all that. So these are the regulative principles of art, and the first two, which is innate, which the nobility of the soul that borders with that divine frenzy. These extremes, they merge in order to create this balanced a balanced piece of art which can become sublime. One not exclusive of the other, one inclusive of the other, both inclusive, but in the right proportion. Because in the right proportion, the divinity, because the divinity generates from the core of the heart. And there is this fresh appeal for divinity, which we have found in after that we have found so much in the romantics, which is linked, and this divinity is very vital to sublimity. This divinity of the heart, it is very essential and very vital to attain this sublimity. And that is why the originality, the relevance, the importance of Longinus, that is why it crosses the test of time. That is why it crosses the test of time and space. And and that is why he is such a force. He has been always such a force to reckon, down from the Renaissance to the Romantics to the moderns, and even now, for his for his this middle for this middle path. And there is hardly, like, you will always find, you will always find
Your mic. Your mic. Dr. Anamika, you have switched off your mic. Yeah. Thank you.
So the and because of his position between the restraint and the freedom, he's somewhere in between, and that is why his relevance is so much more. And so much more, and he remains one of the best, and that is why he remains one of the best exponents of this classical spirit, as well as his relevance is as much in today's time. And later, much later, he has been discovered, as I told you, by the modern critics also. I would like to tell you one, but I don't know whether I have it with me now. I don't think I have it with me. Okay. Then I would like you to have this. I don't know if you have it or if you have gone through this book. Um, Literary Criticism in Antiquity. It's by Atkins, J.W.H. Atkins, a very renowned, famous book. This is, if you can go through it, it's a very good book. It's a very good one. It's a sketch on it's a development of from the first from Plato, and then it has a very good analysis of all the literary critics and the classical critics, and how each classical critic has contributed to every age. Like in the Middle Ages, you know that in the Middle Ages it was more of this kind of this church and religion, and all these came, and so somewhere Plato was it was not very explicit, but in the Middle Ages it was more of like Plato's thought of of the poets not being of so much of use. And then, but then again, from the neoclassical period, the Renaissance, the neoclassical period, then romantics and the modern, it's a very good analysis of the entire theory. So if you can please go through that. And another is Arthur Miller's essays, those Arthur Miller's essays on classical criticism. Those are also, that book is also a very helpful book, I would say. And as Horace had this subdued the theory of poetic works, no, like Horace had in Horace's literary theory, his poetry was lost in some kind of decorum, of the soul. Not poetry was lost, I would say, sorry. The soul was lost in some kind of decorum of urbanity, decorum of satire, decorum of idiom. But Longinus, what he did, Longinus, he is not, he does not do away from decorum, not at all. He doesn't do away at all from decorum, but his way is to transport. His way is to transport the reader to a different world. And you know that how transported, and who can do it? A person with a great thought. So this is time and again in all the 3 chapters that you have. This is what has been stressed time and again, that the importance of great thought, the concept, a person has to think in a noble way so as to produce something noble. A person has to think in a noble way so as to produce something noble. A person has to think in a majestic, his thoughts should be majestic. And it should have the same caliber to arrange those words, then only it can be sublime. Like I have a lot of thought inside me. I have very right proportion mm, of good thoughts inside me, but I cannot express it in as many words or as good words. Then that piece of literature, that piece of work, that work of art will not be successful, will not be like not it will not be a sublime work. So both my thought as well as my way to express it. So that is why the command over the language is so important. And that is something, that he says that uh, Odyssey misses, which is there in Iliad, but because it was created during the decline of Homer's poetic period. That is why the Odyssey has a sublime than Iliad. But however, see your in chapter 9 there is that. However, throughout the Odyssey, which for a number of reasons must be taken into consideration, Homer shows that when a great genius is falling into decline, it is a special mark of his old age that he should be fond of fable. So in Odyssey, you have more descriptions, more narrations, I would say. The narrations are more because Longinus says that in Iliad, as Homer was more in his bloom, the poetic sublimity was more there, and in Odyssey, the narration is more of a narrative. Is more of a narrative phase. Clearer sounds that he produced this work, this second composition. Besides that, throughout the Odyssey, he introduces remnants of experience at Troy and the Trojan War. Because of this, his because of this, Odyssey is narrative. But whatever the reason, whatever be Homer's reason for writing a little less inferior Odyssey than Iliad. After all, it is by this great poet, so it is much better than all, because Homer never lost that sublimity of thought. He never lost that nobility of soul. That was not lost. But what was lost his capacity to express it in words. So what was not lost, but what lessened is his capacity to express it in as many good words as uh, as in Iliad. So command of language, as important as the nobility of soul. If command of language is not there, then you cannot express even if you have noble thought and diction. And if command of language is not there, and in case command of language is there, but the nobility of thought is not there, then it becomes mere affectation and mere ornamentation without any merit. In essay on criticism, Pope has paid a tribute to Longinus, where he says that bold Longinus, all the nine inspire, means all the nine muses. You have been inspired by all the nine muses, and they have blessed you. They have the muses have blessed you with the poet's fire, and that is why, and because you have been blessed by all the nine muses, and because you have that fire in you, that is why you can draw lines of the sublime. You can draw lines, means you can create poems. You can draw lines of the sublime. So the present readers of literary criticism, they owe their allegiance, to the classical age, basically for three works: Poetics, Aristotle's Poetics, Horace's Art of Poetry, and Longinus's Sublimity. These three significant works, they form the bedrock of the Western critical thoughts and inspirations. And that is why we are indebted to the philosophers. These are all philosophers first, and then critics or anything else. So we are indebted to these philosophers of classical age of antiquity, and even to the present day of critical inquiry, or of critical study of critical theories or terminologies or vocabularies, whatever it is. We still, again and again and again, we resort to these texts, to these literary critics. We resort to them and their scholarship, and we are indebted to them because of that. And it never loses as we go on with, we have when literature, and when anything, not only literature, and when any work of art, anything, anything, literature, science, work of art, whatever, when anything touches the chord of the heart, it never loses relevance. Nothing can lose relevance if it touches the heart, if it inspires the heart, if it inspires humans, human hearts, then it inspires society. And anything that inspires society never loses relevance. If that was the case, then if that was the case, then till the modern times, uh, these theorists would not have been reverted or consulted again and again. But as much of the why why the theories of antiquities are so relevant, because they because of this inclusiveness. They have talked about the spirit and the quality and the heart, as well as the importance of the spirit and the quality and the heart, as well as the importance of the form and and diction and structure and decorum, everything, language, everything. So are both of these are complementary to each other, which creates the sublime in the whole. I think that is what we. I think that's all.
Thank you for that wonderful session. And thank you, Dr. Anamika, for sharing with us your thought and even the thought of all these classical philosophers. So now the session is open for discussion. Please come up with your ideas, or if you want to share something, please do that. Or if you have any queries, the session is open for discussion.
You don't have the entire text, right? There is only this three texts. I mean, three chapters in the syllabus, no?
Yep. Yes. Please switch on your mics and feel free to ask questions. Hello, Akhila. Akhila, are you there?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. If there are no questions, then we will wind up. Otherwise, if there are questions, then we can go ahead with that.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Uh, Ma'am, I would like to ask a question about a point you have mentioned that we can see Longinus as a first romantic critic. So, ma'am, can you please explain that point?
Because yeah, first romantic critics, because you know the theory, the literary theory of the romantics, no, where they have talked about the importance of the poet in the society, and where that is one, and the second is that they are the ones uh, who thought that it is the the literature is comes from the heart. It is not something which is not something that is developed and affected with an affected language or with ornamental languages, ornamental style. They did away with the neoclassic view of poems, of writing a poem or literary theory or literature. In that way, Longinus too has talked about of the literature of the heart, literature of power, literature that inspires. And he has used the exact same word which the romantics have used, the literature that inspires. So this is something that he has used it, that something, a creation, which if it is sublime, then it inspires and it lifts the soul. And this is what we, if you read the literary theory of Shelley, or if you read Keats, you will also find that the literature or poems are something which inspires. And who inspires? The poems inspire, and the poets, they are the divine beings who write the poems, who write it. They are the divine beings who can inspire society. In that way, where literature being powerful, literature of the heart, literature being literature of power, not only of has wrote about a literature which is qualitative, that later on the romantics said the same, that the literature is something which is divine and which inspires. Poetry, romantics were of. So in that way, if you think about it, then Longinus, in the same way, I'll tell you, in the same way, we put Blake into the bracket of the romantics, not according to the date, but if you look at the date, then William Blake is earlier than when the romantic age starts. But because of the way he thought, and he's just a few years before, but because of the way he thought in the process, in the way not of the neoclassics, but of the romantics. In the same
Okay,
way,
ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
we put him.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, is there anyone else to ask doubts?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, while talking about the five features of creativity, sense of creativity, you said a point about something that a poet should keep in mind, the impediments. Could you please explain a bit more on that?
Okay. I went very fast, no? With a less explanation. Okay. The three impediments is first is affectation, is language which does not have the which is only ornamental, language which something which is only ornamental and which does not have the which is pretentious, ornamental and pretentious, and does not have uh, uh, any merit inside, like any feel inside. That is one which is one of the greatest impediment to sublimity. For writing a piece to be sublime, or a writing a poem or a work of art, or literature to gain sublimity, you don't always have to use ornamental and pretentious language. It can be very simple. Something can be very simple, simply written, very simple, but it can be sublime. But something can be very ornamental, but but it doesn't have any subject matter. But if you take away, like a skeleton wearing a lot of expensive clothes, is that affectation? If you take away those clothes, there is nothing inside. There is no merit inside. That is one. The second one is pedantry, cold pedantry. Pedantry is something when you give excessive value or excessive concern for little details and little rules. If you give it now, when it is when too much importance is given in rules, no, rules and all, it takes away the beauty of the piece. Too much of if you give too much of thought of to rules and all, but then you cannot be you just cannot do away with rules and write anything you want. No, that is what you have to maintain, that fine balance. It should not be something wooden. It should not be only about the rules to write poetry. There were classical rules on decorum, no? So only decorum without feeling, only decorum without feeling is again something which is an impediment to making a text sublime. And the third is sentimentality, overt sentimentality. Feeling and emotion is one thing. Sentimentality is something else. Sentimentality is something that destroys any work, any poem, or any piece of literature. So these three things are something that a poet should maintain, or a poet should keep in mind while writing, because if these are not maintained, then a piece shall not attain sublimity.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, you quoted a line of P.B. Shelley, poet is like a nightingale that sits in the darkness. Why he says so?
Because the poet is unseen. Have you read To a Skylark? I like this very much. Have you read Shelley's To a Skylark and Wordsworth's To the Skylark? You
Ma'am,
have,
I
no?
have read only Shelley's To a Skylark, not
Okay, that
Wordsworth.
is fine. Okay, that is fine. To a Skylark. Uh, the skylark, is the skylark visible in the entire
No,
poem? The skylark is never visible. But what is skylark's song is audible, right? But you can
like
only
it's
hear. You can
ode to a
only hear.
nightingale.
Yes, yeah. You can only hear the song. So uh, and because the skylark is not visible, it is the poet thinks about so many things. He is the bird is compared to so many things, like a poet, like a rose hidden, like a maiden hidden, like a this, that, and the poet compares it with so many things because he cannot see it. So the beauty of poetry, the poet is also like that. You cannot see the poet. What can you see? You can see the creation. What is the nightingale? What is the song? If the nightingale is the poet, is the poet, then you cannot see the bird. You cannot see the nightingale. How do you know that it is there? By its music. So what influences you? The nightingale's music, not how the nightingale looks like, big or small, black and white. It is the music that influences you, that you can hear. Similarly, the poet's creation is what influences you. The poet's creation is what inspires you. You cannot you cannot see him, or if that's not important, you cannot see him. But what you can hear, see, or what is important is his creation. So the poet is like the nightingale, which cannot be seen, but whose music can be heard. And this music transcends us. This music, if it is a sublime music, of course, if it is a sublime music, if it's a sublime music, then it inspires us. If it's a sublime music, it transports us to another realm, or it uplifts our soul. That is why it is so important for the music to be sublime, to the work of art to be sublime. And how it will be sublime, that is what Longinus tells over here. How, the way that a work of art can be sublime. Understood?
Thank you, ma'am. Is totally different from T.S. Eliot's works, his criticism.
How?
Ma'am, in T.S. Eliot, he says that the thing that poet must
I have not
we have.
ventured into that. Yeah, so I have not ventured into Eliot.
Okay, ma'am.
Tell me. No problem. Yeah, tell me. No problem.
T.S. Eliot told that a poet must have a sense of his. He must inherit something from the historical poets or some renowned poets. But we
Yes.
also have to know the poet's background as well. But here, Longinus theory, we only have to concentrate on the works only and his creations only. That's the difference. I was thinking actually. I'm not
Good.
sure the whole
That
thing.
is the point of teaching, so that you think. Thinking is very important. Think for yourself. To learn to think on your own. So, are we done?
Is there anyone else to ask doubts?
Akhila, someone has asked a question in the drop box, in the chat box.
Okay, so this is a question from Anarkha Joshi, ma'am. Does self-criticism has any role in ancient literary criticism?
Where is it? Can I see?
In the chat.
Self-criticism means self-criticism, criticism of one's own work.
Yes, that's what she meant. Anarkha, can you mute and make that question clear?
If anybody has, what is the question? If anybody has criticized their own work,
It's not about
is
all
that
people. Anarkha?
actually I cannot see the. Does self-criticism has any role in ancient literature? Self-criticism meaning which? I mean, criticism of one's own work in that light. If it is about criticizing anyone's own work, I have still not come across anyone in the Greek classical, among the Greek classical theorists who has been criticizing, who has criticized their own work, or who has said, I don't know. I mean, if this is the question, self-criticism of whom? If this is it, then I have not come across anyone who has done that.
Let us ask Anarkha, I guess. If Anarkha is here, then why can't we ask us directly to explain that question? Anarkha, are you here? I think she has some problem with her
Yeah,
mic.
that's why she has written it, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Hmm. Then maybe we can. Maybe I'll ask the her question and I will let you know, or else we will give the phone numbers or email IDs.
So, uh,
Yeah, Harida. Yeah.
ma'am, on the same note of self-criticism, uh, you said that according to Longinus, if a work is truly sublime, it will equally exalt the spirit of all the readers. Like all the readers will have the same inspiration from the work, right? But we being human beings, everyone has got different psychological temperaments. So why do you think that when we read a classical work, which might be an example of true sublimity, some do criticize it, saying that they didn't like it or it didn't, they weren't able to relate to it and stuff like that. So why do you think there is a difference of opinion when it comes to a truly sublime work?
No, no, no. It's not that all and sundry means all in a mathematical sense. It is when it inspires a greater number of people. Then only it, if a greater number of people can relate to it, then only it survives the test of time. All doesn't mean like 100 out of 100. It's not a maths number. It is not like that. It is never like that, because literature is not an objective thing, it's always subjective. So it is not like all means all, like a mathematical all. It is, if a greater number of person, if it really can relate to it, then it survives the test of time. If that was not that, I tell you, if that was not that, then our syllabus, our syllabus keep changing for every few years. But have you noticed that some remain there? In all universities, in all colleges, some texts always remain there. Some text means maybe this or that by an author, but some remain there. They remain there because they not only because of its historical value, not only because that, yes, as students of literature, we need to know something, and that is a part of it. But they also remain there because it has survived it. And not only for the students of literature, so many adaptations have films, texts, so many adaptations keep on happening. And why does it keep on happening? Because people find it relatable. That is why a greater number of people always, in the case of literature will never be an objective thing. It will always be subjective. But if when it is for a greater person, people, then it is actually influential. We say that it's like that.
Anyone else to ask any doubts?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, you said that Longinus stands somewhere between the classical order of restraint and the romantic order of freedom. So, what, according to Longinus, were the restraints that should be imposed on a particular work of art?
That what, according
Hello,
to
ma'am.
Longinus, were the restraints? Restraints,
Yes, ma'am.
whatever Horace and this art of poetry, of decorum. What he says about decorum, like all a work of art is successful only like philosophy and all these are there, but it has to have this these forms and structures and the decorum. But what Longinus means is that decorum without freedom becomes chaotic. This is the word that he has used. If you read the entire text, the particular word he uses is the word chaotic. Decorum without freedom, the freedom of creation, becomes chaotic. Similarly, only that is why he is somewhere in between. That is so only freedom also will cannot create a sublime work. Not only freedom, not only restraints. It has to be somewhere inside. Decorum means decorum of language, decorum of diction, decorum of rhetoric, philology, everything. all these.
Thank you, ma'am.
The 7 points, no? Horace has, no? You have Horace, no? All the 7 points, no? Language, diction, philology, rhetoric, all those 7 ones. You'll find it in Horace's. In art of poetry, you have, no? The entire art of poetry you have.
No, ma'am, we
don't have it.
Okay. So that is those are the restraints that he has talked about.
Thank
He
you, ma'am.
doesn't tell to do away. Okay, it treads somewhere in between with a balance.
Now, is there anyone else to ask any doubts?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any difference between artistical sublimity and rhetorical sublimity? Can we apply these principles to rhetorics also?
Yes. Sublimity can be achieved anyway.
But
If it
here,
is sublimity, then it can be achieved anyway. But as I am telling you, this rhetoric is a part. Rhetoric is a part of the creation. Rhetoric means the language you're saying, no? That is a part of the creation. It's a part of the, like in the 5 features. If you notice it, the 3rd feature is figures of speech. It's a rhetoric. It's a part of a rhetoric, figures of speech. So when he has said about the 5 features, no, that the what are the other 3, the later 3 features? The figures of speech, diction, and the effect of this elevation. This rhetoric, the figures of speech and diction, both is rhetoric. But what is the essential? The essential is the first 2, that is thought and the concept. If that is there, then only the others work. Then only the other 3 work. The other 3 can be achieved. The first 2, according to him, the first 2 is inherent. First 2 is innate. First 2 has to be there inside us. Sublimity is the echo of the nobility of the soul. So if the nobility of the soul is there, the other 3, the rhetoric and everything, you will be able to acquire. Then in that case, your rhetoric will be sublime, because ultimately whatever you think, no matter how nobly you are thinking, you have to express it in words only, no? You have to express it in language. So there comes your rhetoric. So in that case, your rhetoric is sublime. It's a conditional one. Without your concept and thought, your rhetoric is not sublime. It becomes an affectation. According to him, that is what he has said.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Think there's no more doubts. So let's move on to the vote of thanks. I invite Sutara Lal for the vote of thanks.
A very warm good afternoon to all. Now that we have come to the end of our 2-day webinar series organized by St.Thomas College, Thrissur in association with Srikrishna College, Nadia, West Bengal, we have got a very fine session. 2 of our sessions were very informative, and it would have great use to us, not just because it is a part of our syllabi, but because that is the sessions were something that apart from factual information, we got many other things. The resource person that we got was Anamika ma'am, Dr. Anamika Chakraborty, HOD of Srikrishna College, Department of English. And apart from speaking on factual informations and all, she conversed with us. She did a lot of talking, and then she did answer a lot of questions. And ma'am, that was a fine session. And the first day that you did was an overall view that we got. And today it was more of particular. From you moved from general to particular. And I first of all I would like to thank Dr. Anamika ma'am for having found time with us. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Martin K, our principal in charge, and he's much of a involving kind of a person, and he's one of our teachers of our department. And even yesterday, he asked about the program and all. And on behalf of this program, I would like to thank Dr. Martin K for his presence and inauguration. Then I would like to thank Dr. Anto Thomasi, our head of our department, and as everyone used to say, as our pillar of strength. English department of St. Thomas College is one of the vibrant kind of a department, and it is only because of him that this program happened too. So I thank Dr. Anto Thomasi on behalf of this program. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Shyam Sudagar, who is the sole person behind this program. If I remember from the day one of our SEM 2, he was constantly talking of this webinar or doing this webinar series. And I think this was one of his aim in semester 2. So for conducting this and for getting as one of the finest and one of the eminent person as a resource person, I thank Dr. Shyam Sudagar for this. Next, I would like to thank all of our teachers who has directly or indirectly been a part of this venture. And last, I would like to thank all the crew and all persons who engaged here, who came here, who organized it. My friends, we are glad that we could host yet another program, and I thank them in the name of officiality, of course. So once of all, thank you all. Thanks for organizing, and I wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we wind up the session?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have given that thing, na video.
Yes, I will circulate, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.